our speaker is going to be Melanie Studer. She is going to present 6 things that caregivers can do to support their teens in middle school. So with that, thank you, Melanie.
So I'm Melanie Studer. I'm actually from Boone County, 5th generation. So my family's been around for a long time. I've been a wife, a mom. I've got 3 boys. I've been a teacher. You can see all the numbers up there. I've written a book. I blog for parents of teens. And so I actually wrote more than middle school, but we can just go through middle school and we'll stop. So how can I help you as you navigate these waters of parenting teens, whether it's your teen or your grandchild or someone else's child? It takes a village, and really, we should all be supporting each other anyway. So I love this program. Yvette has told me all about it. So anyway, I'll present however much y'all want to hear, and then we can do some Q&As at the end. And I wanted to point out that I don't know all the answers, not an expert parent or teacher, but I do love to research. And my mission as a mom and as a teacher and as a blogger is just to help other moms, dads, and whoever. So let's talk about how can you support the teen in your life, middle school through high school. And there are so many really simple ways. So let's start with middle school. I think I started with 6 things and then I just kept going. So here's some things to know that I figured out as a mom and a blogger and a teacher of middle school. I am no longer teaching middle school. I did the last 2 years, but I've had 3 middle schoolers and I've got lots of friends that are in those years, and they're so critical. So what can you do? Start the thinking and talking process. This is actually not too young. When we think about, oh, is this child going to go to college? A lot of people wait till the junior year. And that honestly, I mean, that's fine. If that's where you are, that'll work. But if you have any more time before that, it is so much easier if you start younger, especially since at a lot of times they still might be talking to you. Talk about future jobs. Will college even be necessary? There are so many great jobs, high paying, 8 to 5, some are on call, but, find someone who does a job that your teen or preteen may be interested in and ask some questions. How did they get to where they are? Did they go to college? Did they go to trade school? Did they have an apprenticeship? There's so many options out there. Try new things. Middle school is a perfect time for this because grades don't count in middle school. I mean, they count. You should be getting good grades. Your child should be, or the child should be working on good study skills and learning how to learn. But, maybe they want to take a class in something that they don't think they'll do very well in. This is a great time to try those kinds of things because, like I said, it won't count against their GPA. A lot of aptitude tests are given in these years. I think at least 2, at least my kids were over at West Junior. So, or middle school now, I guess. They, if the teen will take these seriously, they really do provide great feedback with not necessarily this is what you should do, but here's some ideas. Here's a broad range of things that you might be good at based on your answers to these questions. So that's something that my oldest son just blew off. He's like, eh. But my other 2, I really talked to about this. And some of the answers that or suggestions that they got are, for my middle son is actually, he's looking into trade school right now. And my middle son is still in high school. So we'll see. More middle school. Apply for scholarships. It is not too early. I put a link in here. It is I don't know how many of you all know what Pinterest is, but it is a search engine. You can go there. I think it originally was there for like recipes and home decor. But honestly, if you have a question about parenting, about scholarships, about holiday ideas, whatever, Pinterest probably has something on there for you. So I have a Pinterest page dedicated just to scholarships. And if you want to sign up for my weekly email, almost every week I send some sort of scholarship link and I'll tell you like how much is it worth? Who is it for? It is harder to find scholarships for middle school kids, but they are out there. And then finally make a plan. What do you each, as in the teen or preteen and the caretaker, what do you need to do to get from point A, where they are now, to point Z, or whatever letter it is, where they want to be? You know, if they're not going to go to college, they still have to have a plan. They still need to try to get good grades. They still need to, form good relationships. They still need to be involved, because all of those things will be looked at later. And my final little piece about middle school is that this, you got 3 years of middle school. So don't try to do all of this at once, and to keep these conversations going, once a week, once a month, but for sure talk. Okay. So it takes time, and don't feel like you're ever, there are busier seasons in life as well. So you may not have had a conversation intentionally about the future for a couple of months. Just be sure you're always coming back and revisiting that. I'm a huge proponent for scheduled and intentional conversations with all ages, but especially when they get to those preteen and teenage years, because there are so many things that need to be discussed, not only school and their future plans, but, just day-to-day topics like, what does our week look like? Who's going to cook each night this week? And I highly recommend that you teach your kids some of these life skills, because, well, as the mom in my house, I didn't want to be doing it all. And I married a guy that, knew how to do laundry, how to cook. And I always said a thank you to my mother-in-law. These kids need to be set free after high school with some skills of how to cook, how to do laundry, how to pay bills, all those things. So share all that information with them. Obviously, baby steps, not everything at once. All right, high school. I'm just going to kind of read over this. This is where things get more serious. The main thing at this age is getting them to stay in school. Having worked in North Callaway recently, knowing the background of a lot of my kids was really rough. Not a lot of home support, had a lot of foster kids. And in Columbia, I taught at Blue Ridge. Even at the nicer schools where I guess you could call Mill Creek nicer, there are always kids that are in distress. There are always kids that are going to need extra help. So our main thing is to get them to stay in school, because most places of business want to see that diploma or a GED. Now, that's not to say that they can't work as a teenager while they're in, high school. But if they're wanting to move on and get like a real job to pay the bills as they move out of high school, let's figure out a way for them to stay in. I have a teen that hates school, absolutely hates it. But we've had conversations, and it's turned around a little bit this year, because we've talked about the fact that most employers are going to want to see a resume and some letters of recommendation. And if you look at my starred item down here, your teen needs to have reasonable grades. They can have all C's as long as they are consistent, as long as they are doing the best that they can, that they've got good conduct and attendance, and you've got to do those things to get a good resume, to get those letters of recommendation. So they're going to have to exert some kind of effort. So that's where that plan that you made in middle school, or as soon as you can make a plan, talk about the fact that school is important. And it's not necessarily the things they're learning at school, it's the habits that they're forming while they are there. Attendance, participation, good conduct. Those are the things that they're going to need in the real world anyway. More high school. School is the teen's job. That means they go, they participate, they get involved. And I was looking for a study, and there are a million. And they were all very boring. So I didn't I didn't want to read like a 42-page essay on, just know that the more involved that teens are, the more likely they're to stay in school. So encourage them to find a club, encourage them to join a team. My son was the worst athlete in America, and he joined the track team, which he came home and said he was joining the team. And honestly, I laughed, but he loved it, and he was terrible. But it was a group that he made new friends, and it was just a fun thing for him to do after school all spring. So, they don't have to be great. Now, there may be some sports where they cut the people if you're not good enough. So find a sport that, like track, there's so many different aspects of track that it's a pretty good one to join. Ask a teacher. Teachers want our kids to stay in school. They are there to teach, but they're also there to support our teens. And then at the bottom, I said, if your teen is more of a loner, have them get a job outside of school. Two of my boys have worked in high school. My oldest was always so involved in things at school that he did not work except for summers. But all of my boys have found great friends at their jobs. So, maybe they don't want to join the drama club, but they go ahead and they get a job somewhere doing something else. As long as they're doing something to participate in the real world, in the world with other people, that's a great thing, not just sitting around playing games all day. How can we help? Be supportive, ask questions, and then listen. It's really hard for me. I have to bite my tongue. Help them to make that plan, and it will change and it will evolve, but have a starting point. Encourage them. And all of this is middle school or high school or even younger. Encourage them to try new things. They have no idea what they will like or be good at. Stay in touch with the teachers and counselors. I will say, as a mom with kids that we've used the high school counselors, and they have been super helpful. But for kids, I'm assuming in this kinship program, those counselors are there for you. They are wanting the kids to get through high school. For our kids, I can go in and ask, but as I provide resources for my kids, I need to remember that those counselors are there for the kids that don't have a great support system. And the fact that you guys are providing that in this kinship program is like amazing. So be sure to use that counselor. And remember that there's going to be struggles and problems, be the safe place. There's going to be ups and downs no matter what. More ways you can help. Have these intentional scheduled conversations. So just grab a spiral notebook and keep track of what you're talking about, or in the back, make a list of things you want to cover and check them off as you get to them, and just sort of keep track. And one thing I recommend too is to write down if your teen is supposed to go talk to a counselor or talk to a teacher about something, write it down and then double check, did you do that? Or write them a note in the notebook, which is another tip I would give you. Sometimes the teens in our lives don't want to hear our voices. That's what's aggravating them, because sometimes we have a tone that we don't even know we have. So use a notebook as a conversation piece. Write down, you can give them an encouraging quote or just a little reminder, a gentle reminder that's not you saying, did you talk to that teacher? It's a great way to have that back and forth. And you can still have notes in the back to yourself, and they can know about it. They can put questions back there too, like, can you find out more for me about where can I go to look about a plumbing program, or where, I really want to go to the MAC. What can I, can you help me figure out what I need to do? So they can write questions too. And encourage your teens to build a network of adults that are supportive. And again, those counselors, teachers, and coaches are all great. So where can you find me? These are all active links to the places you can find me. This is my website. I do have a YouTube channel, and it's divided into categories of conversations that I have had about, like, dating or getting a job or all kinds of things. So, and finally, control what you can. I have a printout with a lot more information than just these words, but control, that goes for the teen in your life and you. You can only control what you can. So like, don't worry about what's tomorrow. Just work on what's today and make sure that all of these things on this list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of these C words are things that you're both working on doing individually and together. And this says podcast at the end. This is just a link for you. You may have to copy. I don't think I made it an active link. You'll have to copy and paste it, but that is a way to get into my website and get the printout for this control what you can print out. Yes, Yvette mentions that active listening is a really hard concept. It is. And, you know, as a teacher and as a mom, I've been practicing it. So I have a 24-year-old, but here's the thing, honestly, me not interjecting, me not interrupting, me giving them a chance to completely finish their thought is still really hard for me. But, you know, I just make it my goal to be trying. That's all we can do. So yeah, I love that comment. It is hard.
So Melanie, how do you suggest, I'm not sure how many folks on here right now have middle schoolers or high schoolers. I know that I know for a fact few have some that are preschool age, elementary age. So what is your suggestion on helping these folks that have the younger kids kind of get started in that, you know, the active listening? Because like I have a 29-year-old and I bite my tongue regularly. Yeah. So and then I have a 19-year-old and that's even harder to do active listening. Yeah. So anyway,
I will say this, I'm back in the preschool classroom. I teach pre-K. Here's the thing, the younger they are, the more they're going to listen to you. They are like little sponges. And so start these conversations now. If you guys are watching a TV show and they see something that looks interesting or they're curious about, you know, go look it up, you know, find out answers to the questions that they have. Encourage them to be looking around for things that they might want to do. And this is a great time to start that back and forth with a notebook. I mean, just honestly, there are some, I'm actually writing a blog post right now about conversational notebooks. Have your little kid put stickers all over the front or decorate it with whatever, you know, maybe memorabilia of things that you've gone and done together. And if they're too small to read or too young to read, you can ask, you know, do you have a question for me that, you know, today, now that we're talking, and you can write it down and put the date. And honestly, this is it will be a relationship builder, and you can look back and think, oh my gosh, look how far we've come. You know, you could do a different one each year because obviously their interests are going to change and they might want a different notebook, but you can sort of, when the younger they are, the more malleable, the more impact you really honestly can have. And then you've established this back and forth. Let's say you've got a foster child. Let's say you started a notebook. This notebook can go with them. You know, it can go to the next parent or, you know, maybe to the social worker. It's just a great communication tool. And some of the things that I would really encourage parents of the littles to do as well is give them some life skills, as far as like one thing that we're talking about in my preschool class is like anger management. Like if something has upset you or made you mad or scared you, stop and take a deep breath, maybe 2 or 3 deep breaths, and then go find a spot to relax. And that's another, you know, their homework last week was go home and find that spot in your house where you are comfortable. So if they're at your house and it's not really their home, encourage them to find a spot where they are comfortable, that they can go maybe cry it out or be mad until they can gather their emotions and not be mad anymore. Maybe have a stuffed animal there. Those would be some tips for some of the really littles, but even in elementary, they still need a place to go that they feel like is their own. Maybe it's just their bed. I agree 100%. And it is, and as a foster parent, I'm sure it's even more possibly frustrating or challenging because you don't know where they've come from. It's what sort of situation they've been in. Maybe no one has ever listened to them. So yes, listening is the biggest thing because they need to feel like they've got a platform. They need to feel like they can express their feelings. They can express their wants and their needs. And yeah, I had a lot of middle schoolers the last 2 years that had not only COVID didn't help, but were just shut down. No one, I think we get caught up in the busy. So put your phone down. It's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge for all of us. It doesn't matter what your background is or what your home life is right now. Just, I think listening is the biggest thing. You can talk to your blue in the face, but until you start listening, you're not going to get very far. And one thing I wanted to point out too is, like I said in the beginning, I'm not an expert. I just know, like, as a mom of a 24 and a 21 and a 17, like, we've had our ups and downs. You're going to have rough patches, whether these kids are yours or your grandkids or foster kids. You got to stay consistent. And that's a really hard thing too. It's all of a sudden I'll realize my son is doing something. And I'm like, wait a minute. I need to set my parameters again. And that is a no. A lot of times we need to remind ourselves as well as them that, this is a hard no. And I sort of wasn't paying attention, and we got to go back to, what was working. Consistency, listening. And as a teacher, it breaks my heart. Like last year was really, really hard for so many reasons. And I think that middle school age, whether it's 6th, 7th, 8th, whatever, that preteen to early teenage, that is such a huge time for them. They're trying to figure out who they are. They may have been told who they are. A lot of times parents don't realize, I really don't. And I'm guilty of this as well, is we'll say things in front of our kids about our kids, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That first time the little 3-year-old won't say hi to a neighbor when they're walking or whatever. And then the next time that happens, the mom says, oh, she's just shy. Well, so help her and just say, okay, this is our neighbor. We see him every day. Let's say, let's just wave, to start with, and then work up to talking. Let's not tell our kids what they are, even unintentionally. Let's let them navigate those waters with our support. That's something like when I had preschool parents coming in this year, I already heard some of that talk, and I am like, oh, but they're not yet. We don't know what they are. They're 4. Absolutely. The car is a great time. I mean, I think they'd think you're like not there. You're invisible. And I ever learned so much in the car. So yeah, you just kind of have to pull yourself out and just let that conversation flow. And you're right, you will find out more than you wanted to know, most likely.
Another part of active listening that I have experienced working with grade schoolers mostly in an after school program, but then also my own kids, is trying or attempting not to be judgmental. And, because you're not always going to agree with what they're saying, or you're always not going to approve what is happening in their lives. And so what is a good tip on that aspect of active listening?
Gosh, that is a hard one, because I think the neat thing about watching the evolution of your children is the fact that they do start to have their own opinions and they're becoming whoever it is that they're going to become. And I think it's just called unconditional love. You have to, it's really hard sometimes. I mean, my son has said things and I'm like, and then literally almost have to glue my mouth shut, because if I love him, that has to be okay. Now, if it's dangerous or hurting someone else, then I probably would interject. But if they're just, a lot of times too, we are their comfort spot, even if we're not their own parents. Like as a teacher, I've had this before too, like those, like that shock value, they will say, they want to see what you're going to say or do. So sometimes it's more shocking to them that you are like, okay. I mean, they're like, they are ready for you to argue with them. So I don't know. I just think we have to unconditionally love these kids, as they become whoever they are becoming. I don't know how. I mean, I guess that would be my best answer for that one. Yeah, I agree. We've had that a little bit, both in my classroom the last couple years when I taught middle school. Those kids are sneaky and sly. You just have to be ever alert. And then in my own home as well, I probably it happened at school. To my knowledge, it has not, but I found a stash of all kinds of stuff and I confronted him and he was like, well, where is it? I'm like, I'm gone. So, again, it goes back to that unconditional love, as long as it's not hurting them or someone else. And that is a case where it's hurting them. It's not a good choice. It's not healthy and it needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped. And it sucks when you have to confront your kids, but that's our job too. Yvette, is your hand
Oh,
up?
yeah. Okay. I didn't want to interrupt anyone. So I want to kind of go back to how one of his kiddos came back and quote unquote tattled on the other. And I have 2 kids and then I have 3 stepchildren, and my husband and I have raised them all. And there was a lot of tattling in my house over time, and they don't see it now. Not even now that they're, the youngest is 19 and the oldest is 29 and the other 3 are all in between. They don't see it now, but it was for their own good. And, they do get over it, but it's definitely a hard thing when you think your sibling is ratting you out, I guess is what I would call it. Or that's what my kiddos have called it throughout the years. So, I had one of my kiddos smoking in the house, and another one, which I would obviously know that when I came home because this is a smoke-free home. But then when my other daughter pulled up and came in, the daughter that was smoking in the house, well, I guess it was actually in the dining room out the back door. So it wasn't actually in the house, but she heard her come in, the other sister come in, and she threw the cigarette in the kitchen trash can and it caught on fire. And so the other one texted me right away, and there's a big dramatic fight between the two girls, you know, verbally at my house. And we had to have a discussion about that, the four of us, mom, dad, and the two girls. And it was a hard one. It was a hard one. And that's just one of many that we've had to deal with, I guess. But over time, you know, now they all pretty much, they have their differences, but they all are pretty respectful of each other, and they kind of understand, or they're starting to understand what's important. And if you think about it, you can, like you said, unconditional love, if it's not hurting someone else or themselves, you know, our group is, you know, we've talked about, you know, health and safety comes first with you guys. You know, we're kind of in a delicate situation, or we were when they were growing up. So it's just really important to keep them safe, you know, to keep them safe. And then when they're safe, they're healthy, and they're, you know, they give their brains and their mindset a chance to grow. Excuse me. And it's just that's just my story. And they just kind of, now they are gaining more respect for each other as time goes on. And my oldest I have a grandson. And so now he is really kind of understanding where his dad and I are coming from, because, you know, for a long time, Joe and I knew nothing. We were stupid. We knew nothing. We knew nothing about any consequences that may come up or whatever. So, you know, just letting them learn on their own, I guess, is a good idea, but it's also sometimes hard to watch, sometimes hard to witness their actions. And that's just not teenagers. That goes all the way back to preschool. And, you know, as long as they're not going to harm themselves, then we just got to let them learn. That's my opinion on that one.
Yeah, and I think that unconditional love is, and of course, at the time, the sibling that gets ratted out does not feel any kind of unconditional love, because A, they got ratted out, and B, they got in trouble, and C, now everybody's mad at them. But, you know, looking back, I wrote a blog post about discipline for teens. And the thing is, we've got to set a boundary, because they're going to push against it, and they need to know where that boundary is. And so if they choose to vape, if they choose to, you know, stay out too late, if they choose to lie, those are choices that they are making, which means, you know, and my kids were like, yeah, I know, we chose to get a consequence, but it's true. So if you're going to make a bad choice, there will be a consequence. And you've got to decide as parents, foster parents, grandparents, whatever the case may be, like, you know, our favorite and easiest and most maddening for our kids, I'm sure, way to discipline them was to take their phone. And I'm sure with some of these situations, you can't do that because they've got to be in touch with various people, but you've got to figure out a way that something that is meaningful, whether it's, you know, limiting or cutting off games for a day or a week, or once the kids know, like, that this is a hard boundary, that it may take a while, may take a long time, but they will eventually think, okay, I'm done. I might find something else to fight about, and then I'm sure they will. But for that issue, maybe I'm going to move on. And that's where you've got to stand firm and be consistent. And that is so stinking hard. And another thing that I will say is, get your neighbors, get your friends on your team. One night, my son snuck someone into our house. He wasn't sneaking out. He was sneaking someone in because we had gone to dinner with friends. And my girlfriend knew what our plan was. I mean, because she was a neighbor and we sort of watched out for each other. And we came home early from dinner because she called. She goes, I think something's going on at your house. And we went home, and sure enough, there were 2 extra children that did not belong here and were making choices that were wrong at the same time. And so our 2 older boys even have said to our youngest, who's a few years younger, they're like, don't even try, because mom and dad, they find out everything. And so it may take us a while to figure out what's going on, but just be vigilant and find a support system. Use your neighbors, friends, drive by each other's houses, call each other, let each other know what you're doing so that they can help you. Right. We only had 2 rules, and one was respect, and that covered 90% of everything. And the other was, if we ask you to do something, you need to do it. Now, there was a little wiggle room in that one, but in general, if, the trash needs to be taken out and we ask you, that needs to happen. I think you're right. I think, unconditional love is kind of a frou-frou term, but it means I got to keep you safe. I love you, but here's my wall. Here are my expectations. And that's where those weekly or monthly or however you can fit them in conversations, you can remind them, hey, I've noticed that you've started kind of pushing your bedtime back. We need to, you're in band, you've got to go to bed, whatever, just as you're keeping an eye out. Maybe in the moment you don't holler at them because they feel like that's all you're doing, but bring it up at a different time when things are not hot and heavy, and just set those expectations and I agree 100%. Let them know this is what I expect, and this is what you'll get from me. I love you, and this is what I need from you, and this is what you'll get from me. I've got to keep you safe. And that's what it means, like for us to love. So it's a fine line sometimes. And they think, if they get in trouble, you don't love me anymore, or you're so mean, or I hate you, that I must be doing my job right, is what I would say a lot of times, because you're not going to like all my decisions and everything I say to you. Sadly, I wish you did, but it was, and my other tagline, and they hated, well, I know it was my choice. Well, yep.
So I just kind of want to, it's almost 11 o'clock actually. So, but I wanted to just say that setting those boundaries are hard,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to start young, setting those boundaries and sticking to those boundaries and being consistent with those boundaries across the board. That's kind of a tough thing too. But I also wanted to let everyone on the call know that Melanie has some really great blogs. Podcasts. I have viewed a few of them, and they're pretty good. They're pretty good. I have enjoyed them. She has just a lot of information. Prior to parenting high schoolers, she did I don't know, is it a program or is it a blog about parenting preschoolers? What?
Oh, well, yeah, that was not on like a set platform. It was just, I shared a lot about that.
So,
But mostly parenting high schoolers, and like and in my mind, parenting high schoolers starts at birth, but really my focus is on teenagers. So, middle school, you're prepping for high school, and then high school, you're prepping for college. So parenting high schoolers is sort of that perfect middle ground for what's, you know, what you're getting ready for, and then from there, what are you getting ready for? And I just think parents of little kids, younger preschoolers, elementary, don't realize how much what you're doing now will help you so much as a parent of a teen. I promise, if you set good, consistent, you know, I'm not a big rule girl, so respect and obedience, do it, and we're good to go. And listen to them and set up these conversations. And then when everyone else's teens are like pulling away and being horrible, and that's not to say teens don't need to have their quiet time and away from you, but you'll have set that groundwork for a relationship. And I just think you don't know how important you are to your kids. Don't give up, just stay in it.
Thank you so much.